Rep. Richardson, would you like to move your bill to be included in the omnibus bill?
Yes, Madam Chair, and in order to get the bill in the shape I'd like to incorporate the A1 amendment, and I'd like to move that amendment.
All right. Would you explain the A1 amendment?
Yes, the A1 amendment clarifies the appropriation to the center.
Okay.
It clarifies that $10 million will be available until June 30th, 2025, and then beginning in fiscal year 2026, the base appropriation will be $2 million. And it also requires a report to be made to the committees with jurisdiction.
The A1 is before us. Any discussion? All in favor of adopting the A1, say aye. 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 All opposed?
Nay.
Well, motion carries. A1 is adopted. We also have, I believe, other amendments. Okay. Who introduces the A2?
Oh, Madam Chair, did you want us to present before the?
We can do either way.
Okay.
Let's just go through the introduction of the bill, and then we can do the amendment.
Okay.
The bill is before us as amended. Chair Richardson, please explain your bill.
Thank you, Madam Chair. House File 1280, as amended, provides a direct appropriation to the Center for Economic Inclusion. The center is the nation's first organization dedicated to exclusively closing the racial wealth gaps and creating regional economies that work for everyone. This bill would address the known disparities in access to capitals for entrepreneurs facing barriers to growth with an initial investment of $10 million and a base appropriation beginning in 2026 of $2 million. There is both a moral and economic imperative for this work. As background, in 2020, the Minnesota House became the first state and then the first chamber in the nation to declare racism a public health crisis with House Resolution Number 1. It passed with bipartisan support and created the House Select Committee on Racial Justice. That began an important conversation on the cost of inequality in our nation and in our state. In fact, we spent time analyzing the 2020 Citigroup study. The large bank undertook the research work to put a price tag on the cost to the economy as a result of discrimination against African Americans. And they found that between the year 2000 and 2020, that over $16 trillion were lost to the U.S. Gross domestic product as a result of discriminatory practices, including education and access to business loan. Specifically, the Citigroup study noted key areas of racial gaps relevant to this bill. $13 trillion lost in potential business revenue because of discriminatory lending to African American entrepreneurs, with an estimated 6.1 million jobs not generated as a result, and $2.7 trillion in income loss because of disparities in wages. Citibank pointed out that if the racial gaps were closed today, we could see $5 trillion of additional gross domestic product over the next 5 years. We also spent time with economist Dr. Bruce Corey, who presented the cost of inequality for the state of Minnesota, as billions are also lost to our state economy as a result of inequality. Not acting to reverse discriminatory practices will continue to exact a cost, so this bill is an important step forward. And with that, Madam Chair, I'd like to turn it over to my testifiers.
Thank you. Welcome to committee. Please introduce yourself for the record and proceed.
Good morning, Madam Chair. My name is Suzanne Kelly. I'm the Chief of Staff for the Center for Economic Inclusion. Our founder and CEO, Tawana Black, could not be here as she is traveling this morning. First, I'd like to say thank you, Madam Chair, Vice Chair Hansen, and members of the committee for hearing House File 1280. Thank you, Representative Richardson, for your steadfast support to the work of economic inclusion. For those of you unfamiliar with the center, we are the nation's first organization dedicated exclusively to equipping public and private sector employers and policymakers to close racial wealth gaps and create regional economies that work for everyone. We take a systemic, data-informed approach to solving the racial inequities in the state of Minnesota. Over the next 5 years, our team of 30 diverse Minnesotans will educate and equip 20,000 leaders, employers, and policymakers with the research, education, organizational support services, and investments in job creation to ensure that 3 million people experience a racially just, inclusive, and economically vibrant economy. We will achieve this vision working in solidarity with Black, Indigenous, Latino, and Asian workers, business owners, and racial and economic justice advocates across the state. We will apply the direct appropriation we are seeking at multiple levels, statewide, to produce sustainable, exponential returns that will be measured in jobs created, business revenue growth, and people taking anti-racist action to create racially just, equitable, and inclusive policies, workplaces, and systems so that all people experience an inclusive economy. In 2023, we project we will prepare more than 2,400 people to take action to create a racially just, equitable, and inclusive economy, impacting 360,000 people each day. With this investment, we can accelerate and grow this impact by over 100% in 2 years to prepare 5,330 people to take action and impacting almost 800,000 people each day. In addition, we measure this year we will support 60 Black, Indigenous, and Latino-owned businesses in growth sectors, helping them increase revenues, create family-sustaining jobs, and meet supply chain needs. This investment would enable up to a 50% increase in businesses served. This includes helping businesses grow annual revenues by 11.1 million and add 112 jobs to Minnesota's economy. Investing in our solutions will equip Minnesota's public and private sector employers with research tools, racial equity indices, racial equity assessments, toolkits, and more, and practices to dismantle systemic racism and deeply embed principles of anti-racism to accelerate job growth and equitable wages, investing in BIPOC communities, to build a local, diverse, and resilient supply chain to accelerate business and economic growth. We will disrupt stagnant, exclusive investments and unleash the power of capital in communities of color. We will drive shared accountability for achieving inclusive growth by evaluating proposed policies and solutions for their impact on closing or widening stagnant racial disparities that threaten the state's economic competitiveness and growth. We will activate individuals to take actions that close racial employment, income, and wealth gaps in communities as a result of engagement in the center's learning experiences. To understand the challenges that Minnesotans of color face, we must grapple with some startling statistics. While unemployment is dropping, wage disparities persist while the need for talent in high-growth, resilient industries grows. According to Next Street Research, white entrepreneurs attract 17 times more equity capital than Black entrepreneurs. Black business owners are 2.4 times more likely to be denied financing than their white peers. And according to the Federal Reserve Survey of Consumer Sciences and the Small Business Credit Survey, white business owners have 3 times the wealth of their Black counterparts. Further, while Black-owned businesses reported applying for loans at 10 percentage points higher than white, at 10 percentage points higher than white-owned firms, their approval rates are 19% lower, even among firms with good business credit and positive owner credit, and those with revenues over $1 million. In the same category, when approved, 40% of minority-owned firms were approved for the full amount of the loan request, compared with 68% of their white peers. Black households now own just 10 cents of wealth, respectively, for every dollar of wealth owned by white households. So why the Center for Economic Inclusion? The center has a singular focus on inclusive growth. We facilitate a smart approach to cross-sector and community-driven development. We provide data-informed solutions and thought leadership. The center is also an organization that understands the need to reach communities across the state. We have already established relationships with communities in greater Minnesota and we are in the process of building out our relationships with regional development commissions to reach our increasingly diverse communities in outstate Minnesota. Madam Chair, this morning we are joined by one of our partners, with your permission, who would like to offer testimony.
Thank you for your testimony. If it's a brief testimony, we would take it. But let's just make sure that it's very brief. All right. Please introduce yourself for the record and proceed.
Good morning, Madam Chair. D'Angelo Svenkeson, CEO and co-founder of NAO Partners.
Sorry, these mics are very soft. Can you get it closer to you? Thank you.
Good morning, Madam Chair. Is that better?
Yes.
Good morning, and members of the committee. My name is D'Angelo Svenkeson, the CEO and co-founder of NAO Partners. We are a commercial real estate and urban planning consulting practice based here in St. Paul. Our relationship with the center has been longstanding for our entire existence. We are a 4-year-old firm. During the pandemic, when we lost 90% of our revenue, the center did not drop us as a sub-consultant, and we're fortunate that they didn't. We went on to work with them and create a national award-winning economic competitiveness and inclusion plan for Ramsey County. When our commercial corridors were devastated by civil unrest, the center was there to partner with us in bringing private capital to the reinvestment along our corridors to leverage the public and nonprofit capital. Additionally, the center has leveraged their expertise and reach nationally to bring in over $5 million of funding that would have not made it into this region, targeted specifically to Black, Indigenous, and Latino businesses in our metro. An investment in the center is not only a good investment for our future, but it is the only think and action tank designed to build an inclusive economy for the entire state of Minnesota. And so their leadership is also investing in the leadership of our future. And so with that, I'll stop.
Thank you very much for your testimony. I believe we have several amendments. First, we have the A2. Lead Kosnick, you have the A2?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And, this was presented before we had the author's amendment. And the main change that I see in the author's amendment, Madam Chair and committee, is basically that we added a ongoing appropriation, if I understand that right. But what the A2 amendment does is add, instead of a 10% administrative withholding from the grants. It brings it down to 5%, which is more in line with most of the granting that we do. But it's highlighted even more so when I was provided the 2020 organization exempt from income tax forms. There was only grants on that form of $117,399. Salaries remain constant at about $1.2 million. And so what I want to make sure is that the money that the state appropriates, if we decide that's what we're going to do, actually goes out to help the businesses and the community that it's intended to, rather than just paying, $1.2 million in a variety of salaries when the grants are significantly less than what the contributions and grants. For instance, in 2022, the grants were $2.6 million, and we only, looks like on line 13 of their form, $117,000 in grants. So that's why we have this amendment here, to make sure that the money goes to the community and the businesses and the entrepreneurs to strengthen their communities and their businesses. And so I would urge members to support limiting the amount of administrative cost out of the grants on the A2.
Thank you. Rep. Richardson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Representative Kosnick, for the amendment as well. In conversation with the center, it became really clear to me that there are additional program costs related to not only technical assistance, but the support that they're providing to entrepreneurs that includes supporting them with land acquisitions and other types of activities that I think would be important that we would be ensuring that they would be able to do that support, knowing that these are entrepreneurs that face barriers. Because the bill is being laid over, I think that we could do some work in terms of clarifying what those program costs would look like to give more clarity around the additional types of supports and technical assistance that would be needed. But at this time, I would ask members for a no vote. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Discussion?
Yeah, just real brief. I know we have a few other bills here, but I appreciate the comments that we do have time to do some more work and clarify how we're spending the money. I'm not certain that I'm comfortable with the ongoing appropriations, but with some better guardrails, I think maybe we could get there. But I think it's real concerning when we offer these grants and the majority of the funds seem to be going to salaries and other compensations, and just a limited amount is actually going to the communities. I don't know that that's the most recent history, but just kind of looking at some of the financials that were presented, public documents, it brings a concern. Members, I think it would be appropriate even at this time to make sure that the minimum guardrail, we're not even telling them how to spend the money. We're just saying don't spend more than 5% of the grant on administrative cost. I don't think that's a heavy burden to bear on this bill for $10 million and $2 million ongoing appropriations in the base. So members, it's just a fiscally prudent thing to do to make sure that the funds that the state entrusts the center are used for building up the community and the economic development. So members, I do think it's appropriate to pass this amendment that would limit the administration of the grants to 5% instead of 10.
Thank you. I do want to acknowledge that this bill will be laid over, and this is not the last time we will see this bill. At this time, we're going to vote on the A2. All those in favor of adopting the A2, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say nay. Nay. The motion does not prevail. The amendment is not adopted. I believe we also have A3 amendment. Who has the A3 amendment? Representative Perryman, go ahead and tell us about this amendment.
All right, thank you, Chair.
barely see
No,
it.
you can't, I'm short and everything. Maybe I should put this like on my.
No, it's not your height. I think it's
So
fine.
thank you, Chair.
Go ahead.
And Representative Richardson, nice to see you again. Thank you for your bill. I first wanted to say that I truly appreciate the spirit and the intentions that you have for this bill. Economic growth is dear to my heart. Obviously, I'm outstate in a more of a rural area, but near and dear to my heart. So thank you for that. So with that said, in the spirit that I'm presenting A3 is to tie this group together with Chamber of Commerce groups and looking at perhaps taking that $10 million and giving $5 million to Chamber of Commerce. And they would have their metrics of $500 given to them per member up to $500,000. They would have to report to you, and they would grant these grants out to their own chamber members. But I see such a great tie with the Center for Economic Inclusive with Minnesota Chambers. That wouldn't it be wonderful to work with the Center for Economic Inclusive and other chambers that are doing the same thing. They want to build. And diversity, equity, inclusion, that's what our chambers are doing as well. And that's why this bill comes from me with a great spirit of heart. And maybe taking that $10 million by doing this will make it worth more like $20 million across the whole state of Minnesota. So that's the intention and why I present A3 to you today. And knowing that we are laying it over, if you even think of this as a good idea, I would love it to be, and I would love to work with you too.
I
So
would like
members, I
to-
please ask for A3.
Okay, I want to acknowledge, is there any member from the chamber that's available to speak on this? Probably not, okay. Rep. Richardson, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Representative Perryman, for bringing the A3 amendment forward. You know, one thing I just want to ensure that we highlight related to this work is the fact that the Center for Economic Inclusion, their work is exclusively focused on closing the state's racial gaps. And as the Chamber of Commerce's, I know, have started to do work around diversity, equity, inclusion, it's not their singular focus. And understanding that nationally over the last 20 years, there was more than $16 trillion lost because of discrimination within our various systems, including the $13 trillion that was lost in potential business revenue because of discriminatory lending practices, and the fact that we're also seeing that inequality here. I think it's important that these dollars are focused on that work of closing the racial gap, and also understanding that the center is prepared to work statewide as well. So for those reasons, I would respectfully ask for a no vote on this as well. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Rep. Perryman, do you have a follow-up on that?
No, I would, Chair, I would just like to make a comment, and that is I am disappointed in some of the numbers you just said with disgrace or discrimination and equity, and know that because I am so near and dear to the Chamber of Commerce, we are really, really working on that. So when you say it's going to go statewide, please, if you don't mind, let me work with you or the center and see if we can go a little bit out state with some chambers or any businesses that might come to me after they know I'm doing this legislative work that maybe I perhaps could come to you. Thank you.
All right, all those in favor of adopting the A3 say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say no.
No.
The motion does not prevail. The amendment is not adopted. We have one final amendment on this bill, A4. Who has the A4?
I do, Madam Chair.
All right, go ahead, explain your amendment.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My amendment was covered a little bit briefly, what you had stated earlier about reporting. I believe firmly that when we have taxpayer money that's applied to grants, the amounts need to be recorded. We need to report on them. We owe a responsibility to our taxpayers to make sure that money's being spent correctly. And I appreciate the added to that. The one thing that was not included in your amendment was the tax returns. So I'd like to offer that as an amendment on the A4.
Thank you, Rep. Wiener. Rep. Richardson.
Thank you, Chair Hassan, and thank you, Representative Weiner, for the amendment. I would just note that the amendment doesn't say tax returns, and I think if what we're talking about are the 990s, those are in fact publicly available. So I would recommend a no vote here, but I do think that we are all in agreement that the funds appropriated need to be there needs to be a report that comes back to justify the spend. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Discussion on the amendment. Lead Kosnick.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And Representative Weiner, this is a good amendment, and I appreciate that there was some movement in the author's amendment for this. But when you look at the history here, where I believe even last year there was a $1 million grant that just came out last night, one of the deed reports, the type of grant is escaping me right now, but looking at the 2020 990, only $117,399 were given in grants, and this bill is over $10 million, and with ongoing appropriations. I think it's important that we do hold our organizations accountable to the taxpayers, and that the amount of grants that were received and into the organizations, the amounts going out is just abhorred, really. Less than 118,000 with 2.6 taken in. That's really troublesome. And then looking, the salaries and expenses, compensation were significantly more than the grants given out, and that's a problem. So we have 1.2 in salaries and compensation and only 117 in grants given out in 2020. And so that's a problem. Representative Wiener, I think that your part of your amendment that asks for the tax forms is important. And if it's not exactly right here, we do have time to do it, or we could do an oral amendment to ask for the 990s to hold our grantees accountable when we give them state dollars. So members, I would support the Wiener amendment, the A4, and ask members to vote for it.
Thank you. Rep. Richardson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I just want to note that the numbers that Lead Kosnick was talking about was from 2020. And so I would like to give Ms. Kelly an opportunity to respond as well.
Ms. Kelly.
Madam Chair, committee members, thank you for the question. Yes, our most current 990 forms, which are being worked on now, you will see quite a difference. First of all, we are, and in 2020 particularly, we're a growing startup organization. So there was an increase in the amount of salaries and benefits charged to, or that you see reflected there, because we were growing our staff and team. Once that team was in place, and it continues to grow, but at a slower pace, we launched the Vanguard Fund in 2021 and the Vanguard Accelerator in 2022 in response to the demand from business owners and investors who were desiring these new models. We won the Chase Challenge in 2022, and that is when we began to expand our services. And in January of this year, we awarded several grants. But now that that accelerator fund has been up and running, you will see more grants being issued out to the community in larger amounts because the infrastructure has now been built. It was not there in 2020.
Thank you. Rep. Wiener, do you have last word on your amendment?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I guess with reporting like this, it's not just accountability to the taxpayers, but it can also be shown as your success as far as how the grants and stuff are going. So I strongly urge that we accept the amendment.
All right. We are on the A4 amendment. All those in favor of adopting the A4 amendment, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, say nay. No. The motion does not carry. Discussion on the bill. Lead Kosnick.
Just real briefly, we talked about some of the concerns in the amendments, and I like the stated intent of the organization and the work that they're doing. I hope that you will be more successful going forward. I look forward to seeing your more recent 990s and impact on the community. But right now, we don't have those confidence in the numbers here. With the ongoing appropriation, I think it would be more appropriate to just do a one-time and a more manageable amount that the center, that we know the center is more accustomed to. 10 million is significantly more than what they've had in the past. And so I don't think I can support this at this time, but we can work on the bill and scale it, Madam Chair. So perhaps it'll be more amicable down the road. Thank you.
Thank you, Lead Kosnick. We will have more time on this bill because it's being laid over. Any other discussion? Representative Katisa Utun.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Representative Richardson, for bringing this bill forward. Ms. Black, the CEO and creator of this organization, is a constituent of mine, and I'm just really excited to see the work that this organization continues to do. I do appreciate that you added in your author's amendment some additional reporting requirements so that we are able to see how things are growing and going, and I think it's really going to be wonderful to get that feedback at the state so that we can see the impact that this organization is going to have on communities of color all across Minnesota.
Thank you. Last word on your bill, Representative Richardson.
Thank you, Madam Chair, for the opportunity to present the bill today. I also want to thank Ms. Kelly for coming to testify as well in support of the bill. I think it's important to recognize the costs to our economy when we are not closing the racial inequality gap. And I also think it's important to recognize that one-time investments are not going to close those gaps that are centuries in the making. And so look forward to further conversation on the bill. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Representative Richardson, for your commitment to equity and inclusion. We started with this committee talking about, economic inequities and the wealth disparities that persist in this state. So I'm glad you brought this bill forward. And Chair renews her motion that 1280 be laid over for possible inclusion on the omnibus bill.